I came to you as a fully fresh canvas. And I guess I'm the perfect example of like someone who has nothing and how quickly they can learn whilst being under your guidance. I think Emily and I fully surrendered to whatever you were proposing to us. And unfortunately, some people come into any situation where they might have a preconceived notion or idea that they may be able to do it better. But with us, we accepted everything that you said and we implemented everything that you said within in days, if not nights. We'd come to your training on the day, and by that night, we'd be doing it. So much respect, and we saw the value that you were providing that we were willing to just go, fuck it, we're going to give this everything that we've got, and have no hesitation.
Welcome to Tradesformation Unlocked. This week's guest, Will, from Proximity Plumbing, built a high-performance trades business from the ground up alongside his wife, Emily, going from working 2 jobs to leading a 20-plumber team in one of Sydney's most competitive areas. We dive into what separates the grinders from the builders, habits, discipline, and the role coaching played in scaling fast. If you're flat out but ready to grow smarter, not just harder, this one's for you. Let's unlock it.
Welcome to Tradesformation Unlocked. I am so excited about today's episode. We have Will from Proximity Plumbing, and I'd like to start with a big warm welcome to Will. Will, how are you, mate?
I'm fantastic, Adrian. How are you?
Mate, I'm very excited. We've known each other for quite some time and recently reconnected again on a deeper level like we used to be connected, which is fantastic. And I'm really excited to get the listeners to hear a lot about yourself, your story. One of the things that stands out for me, mate, is about your execution and your mindset, which we'll get to at a later date. But first of all, for people who don't know who you are and don't know who Proximity Plumbing is, mate, we'll park the Proximity Plumbing bit for now. Who's Will? Where'd you grow up? Tell me a bit about your
Yeah,
story.
sure. So basically, I grew up in Sydney's Eastern Suburbs, and I've lived here my entire life. And that's probably why I've situated my business predominantly to work within the Eastern Suburbs. I went to Waverley College in high school, and through going to school there, I obviously made a lot of connections, which helped me out, when I eventually finished my trade and started my business. So I did my trade with a small independent plumber, like a one-man band where we did a lot of cottage work, and I wasn't really exposed to anything outside of that. So I didn't do any high rise, or I wasn't really working with any mums and dads. It was just predominantly bathroom renovations and just small minor works. But that was good. And then when I finished doing that, I went into high rise development. So I worked for a huge EBA company, and I was exposed to a whole different style of plumbing. And that was really good. And I obviously made a lot of connections through that as well. And while doing those last 2 years of my trade there, I obviously, always knew that I wanted to start my own business. And I was somebody that couldn't really be controlled and told what to do. I had my own way of doing things. And I thought, typically I could do anything better than anyone else. That's just a mindset I've had my entire life.
Love it. It's funny. I see a lot of entrepreneurial behavioral styles, and I think you'd agree that some of us are completely unemployable.
Yeah, that is me.
Talk to
me.
that point. Yeah, go for it. Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, I do not tolerate, or I wouldn't say tolerate is the right word, but I don't do well to giving orders. I'm very good at giving them myself, but I'm not very good at receiving them.
Yeah.
Because I question everything first before doing it. And typically, like I alluded to before, someone gives me an instruction, or if I'm told to do something in a certain way, I can't help but think I can do it better. And yeah, I guess that probably does make me to somewhat unemployable. But where I do shine is that I give everything 100%, if not 110%.
Yeah. That is definitely a characteristic that I've seen in yourself. Is doesn't matter what the obstacle, doesn't matter what the challenge is. There's only solutions. There's no excuses. There's no rationale of why it happened. It goes, who cares why it happened? Let's find out a way to overcome that. So it's very, very powerful mindset to have, which we'll come back to in a second. So now, okay, so we know a little bit about you. Went to Waverley. You made some great connections there. You worked with a one-man band, did some bathroom renos, etc. Then you moved into the high-rise sector. When did you start Proximity Plumbing?
So I started Proximity Plumbing actually before I officially ended my career in high rise. So I would be spending all my days as a leading hand at a larger construction site in Barangaroo. And then I'd be racing off every afternoon to do a lot of my private work. And typically a lot of that private work did start off with real estate and construction. And it got to a point where, I'd be spending 8 hours of my day doing my plumbing duties for another company.
Yep.
And then be racing off from 5 o'clock up until midnight, doing as much private work that I physically can. And then it just gets to a natural progression where you're like, look, it's counterintuitive to do my day role. It makes more sense to follow through with my, after hours work to per se. And, finally the stars aligned, I guess. And I had finished my license. I'd have obtained it and I was officially legally allowed to do the work that I had already started doing. And I was then official with real estate and Strata, which is where I went hard.
Yeah, love it. So tell me, how many hours a week were you working when you were doing both the high-rise supervisor role and also to your own business on the side?
24 hours. I wouldn't stop. If I wasn't actually physically doing work, I was thinking about work, organizing work, literally within my sleep.
Yeah.
Um, from
Would it be fair to
There
say
you
you have
go.
an obsessive trait?
I'm extremely obsessive. Extremely.
I kind of knew the answer to that, but I
Yeah.
thought
Yeah. I need to dominate anything that's in front of me.
yeah.
Whether it's a client, it's a business decision, I smother myself and it until I've gained control.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. All right. So again, we love to turn our podcast episodes into a interview and get to know our guests, but also we want it to be valuable for our listeners. So we're turning into a bit of a coaching session. So if you're an up and coming, the next proximity or business that wants to make it, you got to understand that you got to sacrifice. Like you might have a intention to start your own business. However, you can't just quit one day and then look for work. You've got to build that up. You've got to ramp it up and you've got to work, like Will said, 24 hours a day to make that happen. What kind of time period, Will, was that going on? Was that a few weeks, a few months, or was that, how long was that before you were able to generate enough work to quit your full-time job?
That was probably a 1 year transition. And really, that year and the subsequent years after, yes, you're doing a lot of work, but what you're doing is you're building foundations of relationships with certain people.
Yep.
So it could be a relationship with a property manager, a strata manager, a building manager, or any of your clients. And that work is just a byproduct. But your core goal, my core focus was on just building those relationships up, so that
Yep.
they got to the point that I obviously was fully supported.
I love that. I noticed, and I write notes as I'm going through podcasts, and I noticed there's a theme starting to show here. When we kind of started this, I thought it's all about how Will and Emily execute and Will and Emily's mindset. Well, we have to bring Emily into the conversation. She's been a big part of the business as well.
For sure. For sure.
And also, too, something that I'm seeing is connections at Waverley, relationships. So there's a softer side to Will that we're starting to see here as well. Because I guess from the outside, you might see you as a driven, hard, and this is true as well. But there's also too that softer side, which I've been lucky enough to experience. Tell me about the other side of Will.
Well, I guess there's two ways to look at it. One is the caring, endearing relationship side, and the second would be the calculated sort of, preemptive decision making side, where I'm looking at everything in the long term, long value
Strategic.
goal. So, for example, if you're looking at a private client, some people may look at a private client and go, okay, that's a one job and you're done situation. Whilst I'm there and I'm looking at this as going, well, this is a client that could be my client for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
If you average out the client's needs, they may need a plumber once every 2 years. So that's 15 jobs that I can get out of that one client.
Yeah, love it.
And once you break it down to just its most simplest form, it's quite easy to then scale in reverse.
Isn't it really interesting that both the strategic, some could say a bit harder side, and the emotional, softer relationship side kind of match and go hand in hand? Yeah, yes, I want to. Yeah, it's really cool when we can see the duality in that. That's nice. Tell me, okay, so let's talk about Emily. Emily is obviously your wife and been in the business for quite some time. Tell me how you and Emily work together.
So I met Emily around the same years that I had started my business.
Oh, what year
And
was that, by the way?
that would have been around 2014.
Love it. Keep going.
So, I was obviously starting my career in that. She had just started her career in the airline business. And, me being the personality that I've alluded to, I want to dominate and take control. So I immediately told her to quit her job and come work for me. And it wasn't a question. It was more of a statement. And, she took a leap of faith in me, which obviously we look back and we both appreciate. And she decided to put her career or her ambitions to the side and help me pursue mine. And yeah, so very early on days, how it would kind of look would be her in the car with me, and I'd be driving a truck at those times, and I'd be out doing all the work, and she'd be in the car with a laptop, just quoting, voicing, and reporting.
I remember a story. We won't get into detail now, but I remember a story about when you two were dating and you told her, more or less, I'm the best thing that's ever going to happen to you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, very early on,
I
she
love
was
the confidence, mate. I love the confidence.
well, yeah, it paid off, and we still talk about that story to friends to this day. To be
Love it.
honest,
Love it. I'm just looking up some information in the background. I'm trying to work out when we were working together, but I'll come up with that in a second.
well,
So,
I can answer that for you. I can answer
yeah,
that for you. So we're 1 year in, and I've obviously officially started my business, and things are going well. But I think, like any business, you get to a crossroads, and some are much quicker than others. I was very fortunate to think of this quicker, where you're like, okay, I'm a plumber, but how do I transition to being a business owner? And I think a lot of plumbers get stuck in the mindset of, I'm wearing the hat where I need to fix everything during the day. And at night, I need to be the business owner and I have to do all the accounting and organizing and things like that. And I was very fortunate that I was part of a couple groups, one of them being BNI. And I got introduced to another plumber that was working with you at the time. And he happened to tell me how fantastic you were and your services were. And me being the kind of guy that I am, I don't take an opportunity like that lightly. And so I immediately called you. And I think within a couple of days, I brought Em along and we met you.
yeah.
And I'll never forget that meeting that we had because it obviously changed my life for the better.
Thank you, mate.
And
I remember
yeah,
exactly where it was. It was upstairs at CAFNU, the old office in
yes.
the grounds at Alexandra, and I remember clearly where we were sitting. Please continue.
Yeah. And so, we met you and we were obviously amazed by what you had to say and the proposals that you were making. And I felt like you weren't selling us this pipe dream. You were just trying to connect with us on a deeper level. And that is like all that I'm about. I'm all about building the connection first before selling something to anybody. Because the ultimate experience is when you have someone at such a level that they're selling themselves back to you. And that's how I train my staff day to day when they're dealing with customers. Because no one really likes to be sold to. Someone likes to be heard and they like to have a certain connection, and then they will actually cross sell back to you. And then you're just accepting and reevaluating or reconfirming what they want.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you
So yeah,
probably
that was
yeah.
you go.
Yeah, you probably remember in the 7 steps we go, I don't, and this is again the coaching aspect for the listeners, guys out there listening in podcast land, I don't want you to sell anything to your customers. I want you to create the
Correct.
conditions where you get a customer that goes, I want to buy this from you, I want to buy that from you. Oh, you're a plumber. Do you know electrician? Do you do electrical? And they're kind of just chafing at the bit to come and buy stuff from you.
Could not agree more.
Yeah,
Could not
thank you.
agree more. And I think a lot of plumbers get stuck and they don't understand that when you're going to a client's house, they don't need to be sold to. They've
Yeah,
called you for a reason.
yeah,
Your job is to educate them so that they can make the best decision with the information that you're providing. And if you're in a
absolutely.
situation like that, you don't need to blackmail them. You don't need to trick them. You don't need to fear them into any decisions. And they're more open to wanting to do work with you beyond what you're even quoting.
100%, man. It's such an important thing. Everything's honest, ethical, and moral. We know that, but it's also too. It's more likely you, as a technician, stuff something up to lose the sale than the customer says, "No, I don't want to buy from you," because they've got a burst pipe, they've got a block drain, they've got a leaking tap, they've got a faulty light, they've got an air conditioning unit that's not working. There's something wrong. It's not like I'm buying a Louis Vuitton bag, like
Correct.
there's an
Correct.
issue that needs to be fixed, and they're usually time poor, and it's usually something we say or how we carry ourselves or the lack of confidence we have that stuffs up the sale. It's really important to understand that.
Yeah, correct. And I look, I think a lot of people just overlook it. And I guess I'm quite fortunate that I met you early on. So I don't have a lot of bad habits, because of my background where I didn't do any sales or work for any company that had experience with private clients. I came to you as a fully fresh canvas. And I
You're,
guess I'm the perfect example of like someone who has nothing and how quickly they can learn whilst being under your guidance.
yeah. If you don't mind, I'll share because I still to this day, and I'm happy to, and I've told you this offline as well. I don't think anyone I've ever coached of a business of your size back then executed as quickly and as effectively as you and Emily. By
Of
far the
course.
best execution of the knowledge because I can coach somebody, I can teach them a process, but usually there could be a fear or a hesitation or a limitation of some sort. And they go, oh, I don't know if it's going to work for me. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know. And you guys just took it and ran with it and had profound results. I think roughly from the day that you started to about, I think the 9-month mark, you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times your business in 9 months
Yeah,
is
correct.
remarkable. And we also too, as you know, had to sack every existing team member, or I don't like to say the word sacks per se, because we gave them an opportunity to come on board with the new chapter, but they decided that they weren't a fit. So then we recruited a whole new team for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying, like, I think Emily and I fully surrendered to whatever you were proposing to us. And, unfortunately, some people come into any situation where they might have a preconceived notion or idea that they may be able to do it better. But with us, we accepted everything that you said and we implemented everything that you said in days, if
Yeah,
not nights. We'd come to your
you've got
training on the day, and by that night, we'd be doing it.
100%.
And we had so much respect and we saw the value that you were providing that we were willing to just go, fuck it, we're going to give this everything that we've got, and have no hesitation.
Mate, and not only that, as a good coaching relationship goes, obviously we came to an end of our time together, and you've gone on and you've done even more stuff, which is phenomenal as well. Your business would probably be even another 4 or 5 times bigger than it was when we parted ways. Tell us about, maybe 4, whatever it is, it's definitely bigger. Tell me, what have you guys done in the last few years? What's your kind of focus at the moment? What do you think the secret sauce is to Proximity's success?
I think one of the biggest secrets to success for me, but also many other businesses, and what most people struggle with, is just letting go of control. I think as an owner, you can get caught up thinking that you can do everything better than everyone else. And that might be the case. But even if someone else can do something at 70% of the scale that you can do it, it's still better than you trying to do everything and not actually doing everything. Because if you want to scale, you've only got so much time in the day. You've only got so much enthusiasm to do something. You've only got so much focus to do a certain task. And in reality, you can go only so far alone, but you can go so much further with other people. And hiring the right people actually starts with treating the people that you hire, whoever they are, in a certain way that they feel compelled to give the best of themselves to you. Because you can hire anyone, and even the best people, if you try to control them, you will never get the best out of them.
Yeah, awesome, man. I love it. And you know what? It's hard. It's hard to give up control. I mean, that's why you have systems and processes. So how big is the team now? Give me some numbers on how big the team is. What would your split be at the moment between your B2B market and your COD market? And also too, like, kind of revenue, where you're at now. And let's start with where you are now. We'll talk about the future in a minute.
So we have about 20 plumbers, and our work would be 70% COD. So
Yep.
COD is obviously your mums and your dads.
Yep.
And the other 30% would be commercial. And commercial can be anything from strata, real estate, hospitality style businesses. Where we want to go to in the future is obviously pure COD.
Yep.
That would be the goal. And it's not because we don't like strata or real estate or any of those kind of avenues. Mums and dads are where you can really scale and scale quickly, because if you think of an average company that does, for example, 50% strata and 50% COD, with COD, what you invoice is what you earn. With strata, what you invoice, you may earn 30 days later or 60 days later. So your accounts are never accurate. And so your P&L will show one thing, but your cash statement will show another. And so you're constantly in this limbo of like, how do I grow? And 1 month might be great, 1 month might be bad. And that can affect the way you look at your business and how you conduct yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Cash flow is king, as we know. And if you're not getting, there's no way you can double down on good marketing tactics and buy new trucks or jet blasters or whatever equipment you need, or for that matter, just employ more staff if you're waiting for your money to come in the door. Like there's definitely hamstrings on the business once that happens. So you're going to be moving even more so 70-30 in the COD market, moving more over to eventually 100%. Do you have a time frame on that? Is that roughly?
I was hoping to be out by now, to be honest, with strata, but I just keep getting pulled back in.
That sounds like the mafia. I try to get, no, we won't do that. We won't. But anyway,
but no, I don't put any energy in. So, there was a time where, I was doing only strata and only real estate, and I would be driving that, almost like a B2B manager, or, and I'd be taking clients out and, doing what you need to do to obtain that work. But the truth is that just like strata, it's all relationship based. And unfortunately, those relationships during COVID were very tricky because people were just uncontactable and you couldn't do the things that you used to do, like going into an office and showing face. It was just, COVID messed a lot of things up for a lot of small businesses, and we had to pivot on that. And to be honest, it was a blessing. And so I realized that my time would be better spent working on the business and allowing my staff to have those individual relationships with 1,000, let's say 1,000 clients, as opposed to one strata manager with 1,000 buildings.
Yeah, and like it's such a pivotal point. Like if something does, God forbid, go wrong with the customer, you lose one client. With a strata client, you lose $500,000 or possibly $1 million.
Spot on.
And that is a lot of eggs in one basket. So, and okay, I'm going to give a few coaching tips to the people listening. If you're in a business and you have anywhere 20% or more of your business coming from one client, that is a threat. Okay, because that is overnight, and it's happened to a colleague of ours, Stephen Barber from Fix Today. I won't get into heaps of details. Before he became pure COD, he had a lot of B2B stuff coming from one client, and he lost it within 24 hours or 40. I mean, it takes a while to lose it, but it happens for sometimes no fault of your own. And then all of a sudden, it just disappears, and then you've got no business. Or you, in this case that I'm talking about, you've got 20% of your business disappeared. So be aware of, okay, yes, it's great. It doesn't cost you as much with marketing dollars, but it costs you more with relationships and times and lunches and dinners and so on. But if you don't maintain that, you can lose it in an instant, and that's pretty scary. There was something else you said there about COD and B2B, which I'll come back.
One thing I might be able to help your clients with is you want to be a specialist and not a generalist, right? And so that goes hand in hand with your clients that you look after. And so when you're first starting out, most people would take on any work. You might do real estate, you might do a bit of construction, you might do a bit of and you'll dabble at anything to get that work. But as you grow, you soon need to realize that your strength can only be in one or another. And you can't be a generalist at everything. Otherwise, you'll only get general results.
Yep.
So for me, for example, I'm putting all my energy into private clients. And a byproduct of that is obviously retaining some strata. But that's not my core goal. It's not where I spend my time. It's not where I try to add value. And so if you're dabbling at both, for example, commercial work versus private COD work, you'll never be perfect at either one because your energy can't be split.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And a lot of people make that mistake.
And not only that, when you first started out, it's actually one of the first things I said to you on the very first phone call. You said, "Oh, hi, my name's Will from Proximity." And I think instantly I go, "Oh, I love your trucks." Because you were big trucks, big branding in the eastern suburbs. And because you weren't trying to go everywhere, and again, it's a specialization in a different way. This was through geography, not through client type. You were omnipresent. You didn't even have that many guys. I think you had 4 or 5 at the beginning when we first, maybe 4. I think it was a pretty small amount. But you had great branding in a local area, and you specialised to stay and become the king of the eastern suburbs, which I think is pretty much it would be a fair title for you guys to own right now. The Proximity.
Right now, there is a caveat to that.
Yeah, that's right. You will go expand. You'll be the king of Sydney and the king of Australia, I'm sure, at some point. But yeah, you actually put a lot of focus into making sure that you double down on the eastern suburbs. Do you want to talk about that point for a bit?
Yeah, for sure. So again, I think a lot of people like being a generalist versus a specialist. I wanted to be a specialist within the eastern suburbs. So I don't think it makes sense. Well, to Emily and I, and I'll give Emily credit here because this was all her decision because she's the one that does all the marketing and makes all the marketing decisions. She made a very calculated decision that we should just stick to one area and one area only until we've completely saturated that area before moving anywhere else. And, to her credit, it's paid off. There will never go a day that I don't go and meet somebody who hasn't said, "I've seen at least 3 of your cars today." And that's a fact. And that is just a common thing that is said habitually to anybody that I see, that any of my staff see. And so if you think of marketing as its most simplest form, you just want to be top of mind no matter the situation. And plumbing is very opportunistic and not everyone needs a plumber all the time. So you can't rely on any one revenue source. But there is no substitute for just constant branding or brand awareness with your vehicles.
I'm going to add to that as well, mate. There's something in the simplicity of what you just said, also too in the name, Proximity Plumbing. We're close to you, all right? I'm going to talk myself up. Plumber to the rescue. We're there to rescue you. Mark Nishadi, I hope you're listening to this, On The Go Plumbing. He sold obviously to Scott Irwin, but On The Go Plumbing. The simplicity, like we're not trying to create an artistic brand. We're not trying to create anything. It's got to be says what it does on the box, right? Because when I'm thinking about it, it can't be a convoluted, confusing name. It's got to be instantaneously remembered and it's going to be associated. It's like when I think of takeaway, rightly or wrongly, I think of McDonald's. When I think of soft drink, I think of Coca-Cola. Right?
Spot on.
And
Well,
again, they've got the brand recognition. However, they've got millions, if not billions of dollars to spend on branding. So the name of proximity says, I'm close to you all the time. No matter where I'm at, I'm close to you. So that
sort
means and also people are always looking for the local guy. Tell me about how you came up with the name.
wow, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I think it comes back to what you alluded to. I was obviously when I started my business, like anyone does, you think of a name and you try to be clever. And I wanted to make sure that it was just sharp, short, up, and straight to the point.
Yeah,
you know, I wanted to be positioned in these suburbs, and it made sense, obviously, to be within proximity of people. And I think naturally, I looked online, and to my pleasure, it was available, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna need to take this." And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, when they come up with a business name, they try to be very clever and overcomplicate it. But the best names are the most simple,
yeah,
and it's usually one or two syllables, maximum three. If
yeah,
you call yourself Joe Smith Plumbing, you're very stuck thinking that you're a small independent plumber. If you call yourself North Sydney plumber, you'd be very fixated on being in the north, for example. For proximity, yes, I'm predominantly in the eastern suburbs, but the whole idea is that we're within proximity of you, no matter where we are. And so, for the first 10 years of my business career, which we've just passed, we were focused on the eastern suburbs. And now we're going to be transitioning to other areas. But that name or that brand still works wherever I go.
I love it. It can work anywhere in Australia. It's phenomenal. Yeah,
Yeah, no difference to yours, plumber to the rescue. You're not It's a very simple three syllables, easy to remember.
yeah, love it. Tell me, 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. Tell me what time you go running with your team. Tell all the listeners about this.
So I get up at 4 a.m.
Yeah,
Typically. So yeah, 4 a.m. I get up and I do and I mentioned this before, my 5 goals and my 5 gratitudes
yeah,
for the day. I then share them with my wife and everyone within my company,
yeah.
and I do
Just
get a.
let's not skip over that. It's really I'm big. Dr. John D. Martini's taught me a lot about attitude of gratitude and what you think and think about, you bring about.
Spot
So
on.
let's dive a little bit deeper into this. Why start with gratitude? I mean, obviously I know the answer, but I want it for the listeners.
Why start with gratitude? Well, the reason I start with both is it's actually a lot harder than you think to do it. If I asked you to do them now, one off, it may not be hard, but every day doing them and making sure that they're not the same
Yep.
is incredibly hard. But it actually forces you to reflect and think and position your brain, on a certain trajectory for the day on your gratitudes and on your goals. And, unfortunately, a lot of people that don't have goals or gratitudes, or at least acknowledge them daily, will just go through their days and they don't realize how much of their day is subconscious versus conscious.
I'm going to jump in and add to this too, guys. And we're going to get a bit woo-woo for a second, but it's all based in science. We're all vibration, right? And we're vibrating magnets is what we are, right? And we're vibrating and we're magnetic on a negative pulse or frequency. We're going to attract, the magnet is going to attract more shit, right? More negative shit. But if we start with an attitude of gratitude, right, we're going to vibrate at a different level and we're going to attract more good stuff, okay? So it's such a powerful, small but powerful thing to start your day out with is what am I grateful for? And I said this, I don't know if I said this on a podcast or I said this in a live training recently. There are hundreds of millions of people that would wish for my worst or for your worst day of your week, right?
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, because we don't realize, I'm going to get all teary-eyed again, we don't realize how fucking fortunate we are, how lucky we are, because we start to take it for, especially living in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. I mean, that's a postcard every single morning of the day. But then we start to realize that even our worst days are somebody's envy and somebody really wants to aspire to our bad days. But I'm sorry, man, I cut you off for that.
No, you're right. It's all perception, right? You could look at a day, for example, and be like, wow, I can't believe I got to do 12 hours a day or 14 hours a day. Owning your own business is not what it's cracked up to be. Whilst for me, I'm like, thank God I've got 14 hours to be able to work. And again, it's the same message, but it's just the way you look at it. And, you hit the nail on the head. Like some of my gratitudes would be some of people's worst nightmare. But for me, like I love being challenged. Like my best days are my hardest days. I thrive under pressure. I thrive under conviction, and when I'm doing training with my team. So I do training every single day with my team. And for most people, that would be a nightmare. But for me, I thrive on it because
And
it's such a
just to be
challenging
clear,
thing.
when you say training, physical training, or I mean, I know you do internal
I do
training.
both.
Yeah, love it.
Both.
Yeah, go into a bit more detail about that. So tell me about the physical training first.
Yeah. So I obviously try to lead by example, and I'm very open with my team, and I try to encourage them to follow what I do, more or less. So I'm very big on starting your day in the dark
Yeah.
and, getting a head start on 90% of the rest of the people, right? And so if you start your day with things like a run or a jog or a walk, a sauna, if you're privileged enough to have one, or you go to somewhere that does one, a cold shower, an ice bath, those sort of things, they're going to give you an unfair advantage over anyone else in your life. And that's just a given. And
Yeah.
obviously, I'm privileged to have all three within my house. So I do a lot of those things. But if I don't, I will then meet some of my staff down at Coogee and we train at Titans. And we do all of that before it's even usually 6 o'clock in the morning. And then we start training at 7. And again, by starting at 7, but by having that huge head start in the morning, the way you absorb all the information that I'm giving, or the way that you're interpreting the information that you're reading in the class, completely changes. And so all of that is actually mindset. And by the time the boys get on the road by 8 o'clock, they are at such a high that just can't be matched. And we have an extreme unfair advantage over anyone else.
Yeah, love it. And tell me, how often are you internally training the guys with it when it's not physical, more sales or
Every day. Every day.
single day? It's funny. Success leaves clues, and I say this time and time again. And I think 99% of all the businesses that I've had on the podcast so far, obviously are successful, but also too, realize they're no longer a plumbing, electrical, air conditioning business. They are a training organization working in human potential, right? Like it is
Spot on.
Talk to that
That's
point.
true. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's no different to me needing training from you,
Yeah,
and I think most owners don't realize that the value that they get from you is one thing, but if they then pass that information to their staff, they're going to get equal, if not, similar value. And obviously, and that I do this whenever I can, I'll send my team to you. But, on average, you might hold a course, let's say 4 to 5 times a year, and that's fantastic. But
yeah,
to try to get everything done in 1 or 2 day course, it has its limitations.
yeah.
But if you do it every single day and it's part of your culture,
Yes.
and that's what it is for us, it's like the boys can't wait to come to work,
Yeah.
and if our training starts at 7, they're all in here by 6:30, to be honest, just getting ready for the morning, having a chat, like they're biting at the bit to start training. And I try to obviously wrap it up by 8:30, but it's very hard because there is such high energy that often it does go over. And I'm the one that has to go, well, we need to actually do some work. We need to go meet some clients.
We're gonna pay for the training now. So tell me, okay, let's say there's someone listening going, oh, that's all well and good. You've got 20 staff and you can afford it. What would you say to somebody that's kind of in that kind of frame of mind at the moment? Obviously, at the beginning, you didn't.
Well, you can't afford not to do it. They're
Yeah,
crazy. They're
yeah,
crazy. It doesn't matter how many staff you've got.
yeah,
It's probably easier with less staff
yeah,
and harder for me, because if you think of the dollar value that I put against each staff member, I look at them at, for example, a billable hour of $850
yeah,
as an example.
yeah,
And, if I've got 10 staff in here, I'm calculating 8.5 grand
yeah,
every hour, where they're not outside being productive, whether they're quoting work or completing something that's been quoted. And so it's a huge investment of both my time and their time. And, it's harder for me than it would be for somebody with 1 or 2 staff,
yeah.
to be
100%
honest.
Sada. I was thinking not so much the logistics, but more from the dollar value. Oh, they think, oh, you're a big business, you can afford it. But if you're not doing it with 1 or 2 staff members, you're leaving so much money behind, right? You might be making a small profit, but if you go and spend this time, and again, you don't have to do it with transformation. I'm just talking about you can pick up some good stuff off YouTube if you're at that point where you're still starting out. Ideally, like Will has said, it's best to go and learn from someone that's already proven it and shown it, not only in their business, but with other businesses. However, you don't have that limitation. You can go and find stuff on YouTube and you can start to do it weekly. Your revenue and your bank account will dramatically increase, like remarkably increase.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, to put in a perspective, the guys that were doing a lot of the quoting were averaging 2.5 to 3 grand, a day in sales, and now they're creeping up to 10 grand, if not more, daily.
Yeah.
And that didn't come from, more experience. That came from training and
Yeah.
rehearsing. And it's no different to training your body by going to the gym, or training, your mind. It is something that you can't just do once. It has to be consistent. And the
Yeah.
more consistently you can take the time to do it, the better the outcome. And it takes discipline, because, to be honest, when I first started, I was like, oh, no, it's going to make more sense than working. But once you start to actually, surrender to the idea and implement it, within weeks, you will see a huge trades formation.
Awesome. I love it. Trades formation. I love it. Nice plug. Mate, I'm going to ask you a strange question, all right? So take a minute to think about this. The concept of fear, how do you relate to it? Does it come in your life at all? How do you deal with it?
No
It's a
fear.
lot.
I don't understand the question because there is no fear.
Cool. So what about if someone's going through, oh, but what about this and what about this and what about that? Is that always been a natural way of being for you? You just didn't feel fear?
I'm very reactive.
Yeah,
So, I think fear is by people procrastinating on decisions.
right.
And instead of just going with their gut and making a logical, like for example, the fear of using a coach or using you.
Yeah, right.
Quite often people know they need one and can appreciate having one. So they could be listening to this right now and going, this makes sense. I want to emulate that success. I'm going to use Adrian because that's how he got successful. But then they go down this rabbit hole of overthinking it and then justifying it and then questioning it instead of just going, this was what I need to do and I'm going to do it no matter what.
Okay, I'm going to
And
pull the
unfortunately,
trigger.
people overlook that.
Yeah. Look, it's funny. And then you talk to your mates that don't have a clue. And your mates are your mates because they're beautiful people, but then they're not necessarily expert to help you run your business. And then you get into, misery loves company. So I get that. Yeah, it's a fascinating thing because you do come across quite fearless. And a lot of people can't understand that because a lot of people are driven. And another thing too, me and TV and social media, I just don't have it. I mean, my social media is amazing because Sarah, our marketing manager, does a phenomenal job, but she can never get a video out of me. Like I'm really hard to sit down and get the content out because I just simply don't have social media on my phone anymore, right? Like I'll have it on my desktop or my laptop, and I'll check in from time to time. And also to the news and TV, that also adds to that aspect of fear. What's your kind of digestion of those things, social media and TV? Is it nil? Is it somewhat? How do you digest those mediums?
All the distraction.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think unfortunately this day and age there's information overload. And so you need to learn how to cut through the bullshit. And you kind of alluded to it. And it was interesting that you made that point about how some people may want to go to YouTube to learn, strategies on sales or how to teach their staff. But, at the end of the day, from the most simple point, sure, I could get training on how to convert more blockchains on YouTube. I could get it from a book. I can get it from a podcast. But there is going to be no substitute for someone like yourself who's done all of it already and can just give me the high level information that I need. And so a lot of people might go, oh, you know what? I don't need this because I can read it here, or I can ask a fellow plumber how to do this. But in reality, you're going to save yourselves a ton of time and ton of failure by just asking one true
shortcut.
source who's done it all. And it's
Mm,
a shortcut. And it's like, you're not going to get a better example than me with you.
yeah,
I saved, let's call it 10 years of
yeah.
my career by just getting all the information from you. And when
That,
I was with you, I was very fortunate that I had you once a week for nearly a year, 8 hours a day. Plus, I had you on speed dial, the
yeah.
proof's in the pudding, right?
Well, mate, I'm very humble. This is about you, not me. But one thing that you've
I
done,
have a lot of love to give.
thank you,
You've
man.
changed my life, and
Yeah,
if Emily was here, she would say the same thing.
thank you so much. It really humbles me, mate. I'm trying to trying to choke up again. The one thing that you guys also have done has have really got amazing social media presence. Like a lot of people, you're an influential company, an influential guy, right? Like, do you know? Is that an Emily thing? Is that been a Will thing? Has it been a combination?
Or Emily,
Yeah,
or Emily, or
she's
Emily.
been remarkable on how much of an influence proximity has on other plumbers, on their clients. We're gonna have to get Emily
It,
back with you next time.
yeah, I know. We're gonna stop having kids. Look, it all comes down to consistency. Marketing of any kind is just consistency. You
Yeah,
cannot do any form and just throw money at a problem and think
yeah,
it's just going to solve it. It just doesn't work that way. And, when you think of social media is like the glue of all other marketing styles.
yeah,
So, if you think of a client profile who needs a plumber, there's only going to be a few avenues they're going to go. They're going to go from a referral. They're going to go from online on Google. But whether they go from a referral online or Google, they're always going to think, do I know this plumber? And so with our marketing, we're like, again, top of mind. So everyone knows proximity plumbing.
yeah,
Everyone sees us. They see our cars. They see
yeah.
our boys walking around. They see us on social media. And so, but it's all just consistent. And so we almost smother them so that when it comes to that time they need a plumber, we're the natural choice.
You're omnipresent, so you're just everywhere at all times because of the level of branding and marketing that you're doing. It's
Correct.
you get your try you got your actually it's probably we're getting close to the end, but we'll keep going for a little bit longer if you don't mind, mate. But we should definitely get you and Emily back in the next few months and talk about that marketing aspect, because you've got your box trailers, you've got your social media, you've got your SEO, you've got your videoing of using Bondi Beach. I know that was huge back in the day too. It not only attracted clients, but it also attracted staff saying, I want to work with that company as well. So that's another aspect where marketing and recruiting are the same thing, just with a different target market. And I'll explain that a bit more. If I'm trying to work out who my target market is for a client, I do the exact same process as when I'm trying to attract staff as well. So the only distinction is where I start to put the focus, because the activities are all the same. So that it kind of was a double win for you guys when you did that so well.
Yeah, I think another thing that a lot of people get wrong is your social media is not where you're selling yourself to the customer. It's where you're promoting your brand. So, for example, like if people were to look at our social media, a lot of it is lifestyle.
Yes.
You know, our website, the hero video is all about lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's showing you, you know, our boys playing rugby. It's showing you, you know, glimpses of us at the beach, where we're working. And so we're trying to sell you a story of like, well, not even sell, but we're trying to show you the kind of company that we are.
Yeah.
And it's no different
I
to
agree
our
with you.
office, which
It's
you've
not
been
about,
to.
sorry to say, it's not, you're right. It's not about selling. You're giving them a glimpse into the life of what your guys have got. Yeah. I love it. Will, tell me, what is your biggest lesson, right? Actually, how did you, like, there was a probably, I know COVID in hindsight was a great thing for tradies, but right at the beginning, like, I guess it was pretty unsettling for everybody. Was there any inkling of a fear or anything like that at the beginning when there was a bit of uncertainty, or has there
No
been
fear.
any other, sorry? No fear?
No fear.
All right, I'll change tack. For the people listening, right, whether they've got a big business or small business, it doesn't matter. What would you say your biggest lesson and your biggest piece of advice would be to people listening today?
Don't try to outsmart like logical thought. So, and what I mean by that is, yes, a coach or a mentor might cost you money, but there's a reason they cost money. And in reality, you know, the more they cost, it's actually a value that they're providing,
Yeah,
right? So there's many ways to absorb information. And so you could go read a book, you can go YouTube, or you could go through 6 different avenues of coaches. But at the end of the day, what that coach offers you in terms of value is more important than what it costs. Because to be honest, for me, if I'm looking for a coach or I'm looking at somewhere to get my information, I want it to be the most expensive or the highest value, because usually that's of the highest quality. And so there's a direct correlation between what something costs you versus the value that you're going to get from that.
yeah, love
And it's so easy to be like, no, 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 I'm smarter. I'll watch it on YouTube. There's 1,000 people on YouTube who I can just watch for free and I'll get the information that I need. And
it.
that's going down that generalist path. Now, if
Yeah,
you want to get somewhere really quick, unfortunately, everything comes at a price. And so whatever you're willing to pay, you will get that back tenfold. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize that, and they think they're smarter, and so they overlook it.
yeah, 100%.
And so for me and Em, we've surrendered straight away, obviously, to you. And that was like a repeatable thing that we've done throughout our lives, where we've realized that there are people that are smarter and have done things before us. And so why try to do it ourselves when we can just get there quicker?
Yeah. I apologize. I just stepped on your toes there a few times, but there's also a direct correlation with I'm okay to pay premium for a coach, a truck, a vehicle. We're talking to Scott Irwin the other day about relining equipment and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, if you're doing, I want to nickel and dime, pardon the American expression, but I want to be a tight ass. Let's use an Australian expression over here. But then I complain when my clients are tight asses. Well, I'm creating that energy. I'm going to buy premium and I'm going to provide premium, right? I can't buy tight ass and provide premium. But there's a disconnect. There's a
There is
massive,
this.
yeah,
I mean, another way to look at it is, you know, if you're a plumber and you want to get into drains and you want to sell a lot of drains, you would expect that you need to buy a nice car and you need to buy the best camera. And let's say the best rigid camera might be 30 grand. But all of that is a complete waste of money if you don't have the training on how to use those tools
absolutely.
with your client. So why would you not invest, you know, at least 40% of that 30 grand to being trained on how to convert what you see on camera to a lead?
Yeah,
Because that's ultimately what's going to get you your money back, not
yeah.
the tool that costs 30 grand.
It's how to use the tool. Yeah,
Yeah. And again, people just overlook the most simple, you know, it's just to you and I, it's basic, right?
yeah,
Because we've gone through all the hard yards. But for someone starting out, they think, look, we're smarter, we'll do it a different way. And they soon learn, sooner, you know, obviously sooner some than others, but People do ultimately learn that, they're going to end up where they started, but they could have just gone a lot quicker if they
Yeah.
had just accepted what
with
it
a lot
is.
with a lot less pain on the way.
Yeah,
We're going to land the plane here, mate. We're coming in. We're going to a little, which is fun. I don't mind going. I could speak to you all day, buddy. This has been amazing.
all day, mate, all day.
First and foremost, I want to thank you so much for your time, but also too, I want to get a commitment. We can get you back in a few months with Emily as well? Is that possible?
That is definitely possible.
Excellent. We'll get Emily on, and we'll probably go down a bit more of a marketing tangent, and also too, we did this with Vicky and Scott as well about working with your partner, because that also brings in its own challenges, which is really great for the listeners to hear. But mate, love your work. Keep it up. Don't change, mate. You're on the right track, as you know. You don't need us to tell you that, but we really, really appreciate your time. We appreciate you being vulnerable here today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.